Hello and welcome to the beautiful station at Ribblehead. To get here, I've just passed through some of the most stunning countryside with the most remarkable viaducts. I'll be talking more about the station later in the video, but I'm just leaving the station now and entering the car park at the rear of the station master's house, where you get your first glimpse of the Ribblehead Viaduct. It's just awe-inspiring. You don't have to be a railway enthusiast to be blown away. The Batty Moss Viaduct, as it's known, is 440 yards long and 104 feet above the valley floor at its highest point. It's made up of 24 arches of 45-foot span with foundations that are 15 feet deep. The northern end of the viaduct is 13 feet higher in elevation than the southern end. It was designed by the engineer John Sidney Crossley, and the first stone was laid on the 12th of October 1870, with the last stone being laid in 1874. Wow, what a sight this is of Northern 158752, the 0920 Leeds to Carlisle service crossing the Ribblehead Viaduct. There's no doubt that the Settle to Carlisle line is a magnificent piece of railway architecture. Opened in 1876, it's 72 miles long with a series of tiny stations, and you saw some of those at the beginning of the video. They're beautifully maintained and are located in some of the most rugged countryside in Britain. Back in the early 1980s, there were only a few trains each day running along the line, with passenger numbers dwindling. A number of the intermediate stations were closed and the line was losing money. In fact, the line was falling apart and British Rail argued that it would cost too much to repair. It was the request to close the line that caused a storm of protests. The Friends of the Settle and Carlisle line were formed, with their headquarters in Settle, to fight a huge battle by encouraging more people to use the line, thereby generating more revenue and generating huge national publicity, which strengthened the case for keeping the line open. Putting forward the case to close the line, British Rail said that the cost of repairs to the Ribblehead Viaduct alone would be in the region of £7 to £9 million. However, trial repairs to the important parts of the structure found that the actual costs of repairs were in the region of £2.75 to £3.25 million. With the cost of repair being revised down to a third of the original estimate, the case for closure of the line weakened. Michael Portillo, who was Minister for Transport at that time, argued the case for keeping the line open, and this was agreed by the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. Just being this close to the viaduct and watching the trains pass over this remarkable structure just blows me away. It's fantastic. The settled Carlisle Railway is valued both for what it is today and for the ambition of those Victorian engineers who were responsible for building it. But when you look at the terrain, you just have to wonder how they could ever have dreamt of building a railway through it. Apart from steam engines, they had little other machinery for the boring of the tunnels and the building of the viaducts, and it was all built by the hand of a vast army of navvies working in very difficult conditions, leading to a very heavy death toll. It must have seemed madness to even consider building a railway across the weather-beaten Yorkshire Dales, but the Midland Railway Company wanted a high-speed link to Scotland in order to compete with their rivals, and desperate needs generate heroic solutions. Standing just a few feet away from the viaduct, you can't help but think about the hundreds and hundreds of men who toiled, sometimes in the most challenging of weather conditions, piling these immense blocks on top of each other to create this wonderful, beautiful structure. Many of the navvies came with their families, and shanty towns appeared all along the route to house thousands of people working through gales and snow for years on end to build the line by hand. It was back-breaking work. Many of the shanty towns were overcrowded, leading to disease and squalor, and there was a smallpox epidemic that broke out in 1871. Some of the navvies suffered the most appalling injuries and accidents, and there were many deaths. Many of those who died are buried in the nearby church at St Leonard's in Chapel the Dale. The importance of the chapel is that it puts into context the dreadful toll that the building of the viaduct had on the army of navvies who worked on it. Between 1870 and 1875, 201 people were buried at the churchyard, and of these, 110 were children under the age of 13. In fact, so many people lost their lives in building the viaduct that the railway company paid to extend the graveyard. Once the settled Carlisle line was completed, maintaining the line proved almost as difficult as building it. The effects of the ongoing exposure to wind, rain and snow have clearly impacted on the structure over the years, as can be seen in these photographs from the 1980s. When the viaduct was originally built, it had 2 tracks crossing it, but as you can see in this photograph, the track bed was reconstructed so that a single track now runs along the centre of the viaduct, and this avoids the possibility of 2 heavy freight trains crossing the viaduct simultaneously. The Friends of the settled Carlisle line deserve enormous credit for the campaign that they ran to safeguard this line for future generations to enjoy. It took 4 years and 1/3 of the workforce to build, making the Ribblehead Viaduct one of the Victorians' greatest railway architectural achievements. One of the things that has always stood out for me about the Settle Carlisle line is that it's unique among British railway lines, as its Victorian architecture remains almost intact. In fact, the line has a rich legacy of historical fact and folklore and includes a wide range of original buildings and structures. I think it's very easy to be totally absorbed by the viaduct when visiting Ribblehead, but the station itself is really interesting and warrants a much closer look. It opened on the 4th of December 1876 and was originally named Batty Green, but was renamed Ribblehead from 1877. It was a station with a difference. The station master was trained in meteorological matters, and his duties included the collection of rain and wind speed data for the Met Office in London. Up until 1956, Sunday church services were held in the main station building. The station was closed between 1970 and 1986, but is now leased by the Settle and Carlisle Railway Trust, which has completely restored and refurbished it. There are resident caretakers, there's a small shop and tea room selling memorabilia, and its visitor centre includes exhibits about the history of the line and the fight to keep it open. When the station closed in 1970, the station master's house was sold. It was later bought by the Settle and Carlisle Railway Trust, who restored it and opened it up as a holiday home in 2013. It sounds like a lovely place to take a holiday. The nearby Station Inn was built around the same time as the viaduct. It offers a wide range of food and drink, as well as overnight accommodation. The visitor centre at the station was refurbished in 2017 by volunteers. There were several items on display which really caught my eye. There was this wooden Midland Railway cash box from Ribblehead Station dating back to around the year 1900. Then there was the famous Thomas Edmondson Railway ticket dating press, which I'd heard so much about on a previous visit to Holtwhistle Station. This Midland Railway ticket issuing case also caught my eye, as did this telephone, which is similar to the one used at Ribblehead in the 1950s. I've always had an interest in station clocks, and this Midland Railway clock was made by Potts of Leeds and was restored in 2005. The majority of the 1600 clocks that were manufactured by William Potts and Sons were installed in public buildings, churches, railway stations, workplaces and other premises, largely around the north of England. A new northbound platform was built in 1993 for trains travelling between Leeds and Carlisle. To access the platform, I need to go across the Barrow Crossing, check in to the right, and to the left to ensure it's safe to cross. As I wait for my train home, my overriding memory of the day is to the men who built this railway and to the enormous sacrifices that they made. It's easy to see why the settled Carlisle line is one of the world's greatest railway journeys. From those who designed it, to those who built it, to those who maintained it, to those who fought so hard to protect it. The story of the settled Carlisle line is a classic example of triumph over adversity. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Join me next time when I'll be back on the Cumbrian coast, visiting the least used stations of Cumbria. Until then, from me, Stephen Bennett, take care. Bye-bye.